Hello and welcome back. Dear learners, in this series we have been discussing about the origin of the Russian language, its structure and nature. We have also discussed about the Russian alphabet. As you know that in Russian alphabet we have 33 letters, out of which 21 are consonants and 10 vowels and 2 signs. When we use these consonants and vowels separately, we now know that how the pronunciation of these vowels and consonants are. We have also seen that how these consonants and vowels are used in words. These words or nouns which are being used in Russian in our day to day communication. We have also seen the usage of personal pronouns, possessive pronouns and demonstrative pronouns. Personal pronouns like ya, ty, on, ana, ano, мы, we and ani are being used especially when we conjugate verbs. These verbs which have their distinguished identity as they belong to certain categories. Verbs like chitach, gavrich, reach, etc. These are the verbs which ends with the n soft sign and certain other verbs which ends with s and ya like uchitsa, zanimatsa, etc. Further, we have also discussed about how the usage of prefixes in verbs. For example, in the earlier sessions we have talked about verbs like pisach means to write or napisach which means to write completely. Here the usage of prefixes play a pivotal role. We have also seen the usage of prepositions in Russian, when to use va and when to use na, which means in, at or on, as we now know that it depends upon the context, as well as there are some universal fundamental rules which are applied when to use va and na. For example, va is used whenever we talk about a place, a country or a town like Flondane, Vinji, Vamerike, etc. We have also seen the usage of na, for example, na fabrike, na zavode, etc. Further, we have also discussed about the usage of such verbs called glagoli dvizhenia or the verbs of motions. We have seen the usage of ichi and khajich and yekhach and yezdich as they belong to two different groups. They also show the completion of an action like ichi, which means to go on foot, is one direction, whereas khajich has been used to distinguish it that it is also a motion, where means that to go on foot, but a complete action, that going and coming back. Accordingly, yekhach and yezdich has also been used to describe a movement by transport. We have seen in the prepositional case itself that how we use the question gdzie, which means where. We have also seen the usage of kuda, which means where to, and accordingly rules are being applied. Ya живу в Delhi, I live in Delhi. It is an example of gdzie, whereas ya yedu домой, ya yedu Moskvu, etc. are being used to describe the usage of kuda, which means where to. Accordingly, there are certain categories of verbs are being used when we talk about gdzie and when we talk about kuda. Dear learners, in the previous lesson we have talked about the usage of atyom and akom. We have also seen how atyom and akom are being categorized as что means what and кто means who. Accordingly, when we use a with что and кто, it changes into atyom about what and a kom means about whom. As we know that in Russian we have certain genders like the masculine, feminine and the neuter, and accordingly their endings of nouns are changing, like In the masculine, we have used brat, drug, etc. They have been changing as abrate, adruge. We have also seen a fundamental rule applied when we used Ivan, Anton. These are the examples of nouns which starts with a vowel, and that is why they have been changing as ab Ivane, ab Antone. We have also seen certain such examples of nouns of masculine gender which falls into a category of inanimate, and that is why they have also been changing as universicet, ab universicece. And accordingly, we have also talked about changes in neuter gender, as well as we have discussed about such changes of noun endings of feminine gender, like padruga, sistra, mama, babushka, etc. like a padruge, a mame, a sistre, and a babushke. You can also use these expressions in your own day-to-day communication in Russian. We will be discussing in detail usage of akom and atyom when we talk about the feminine gender, as we know that these nouns which ends with a, ya, and iya, they belong to the feminine gender. Let us go to the next slide, so that we can understand how these nouns of feminine gender which ends with a, ya, and iya are changing when the question is asked according to the nature animate or inanimate. Please pay attention. Here we have given a list of shto and atyom. Like there are certain examples of nouns which ends with iya, like lecția, conferenția, Россия, India, and istoria. They are being changed as a lecții, a conferenții, a России, a bingi, and a bistorii. And how they are changing, the rules which are applied are known to us. Like we have seen that a bingi is being used because India is a noun of inanimate nature used in atyom as ob, because it is starting with a vowel e. India has been changed into a bingi, and accordingly Россия, which is again a noun of feminine gender, but it is changing as a Rasi, because it is starting with a consonant r. Accordingly, we have also seen a few examples like lecția, auditoria, biblioteca, etc. These are all examples of feminine gender, and they will be changing according to the rules applied, as we have discussed about them in our previous lessons. As you know that in feminine gender itself, there are certain nouns which ends with soft sign. And what are the rules? Let us discuss them. Please pay attention to this slide, so that you can understand them in a clear and efficient manner. There are certain nouns like noch, chitraj, ploshaj. They will be changing into a nochi, a chitraji, and a ploshaji. And accordingly, we have two more such nouns like doch and mach. They will not change as a dochi and a machi, because these are exceptions. It will be changing into a docheri and a macheri. Dear learners, as we know that in Russian we have exceptions, like we have seen in the masculine gender also, like sad changes into sadu when used with a preposition. Accordingly, in this case also, like we have just seen the usage of mach, which is again a synonym for mama, and doch, which means daughter, they are changing into a macheri and a docheri. We can use questions like akom vi dumaiche, ya dumayu a macheri. I am thinking about mother. Akom vi dumaiche, ya dumayu a docheri. I am thinking about daughter. So, accordingly, depending upon the context as well as depending upon the nature of the noun, whether it belongs to the animate or inanimate group. You precisely and appropriately use a chum and a comb, as we have used in the case of achom. We have used certain nouns like chitraj, and that is why it has been changing into achitraji as per the rules applied, which we have learned in the previous lessons. We drop soft sign in place e. Please pay attention to the slide again, so that you can understand this in a more correct manner. Noch changes into nochi, chitraj changes into chitraji, and plosha changes into aploshaji, but doch changes into adocheri, and mach has been changed into a macheri. Now, in this section we will be discussing more about the usage of the endings of noun as well as the endings of adjectives of these nouns which qualify with them. As we have already learned in our previous sessions that how these adjective endings are changing with the nouns. If any masculine gender noun is there, the ending would be according to the usage of the noun, like Kharoshi, Drug, Malinki, Dom, Balshaya, Komnata, Malinkaya, Fabrika, Balshoe, Akno, Malinkaya, Pole, etc. Here you have seen that how the ending of these adjectives are changing as per the usage of the endings of the noun. If a hard ending consonant is used at the end of a word belongs to the masculine gender, like drug, brat, etc., and accordingly adjective has been used like haroshi, plakhoi, balshoi, malinki, etc. Accordingly, for feminine and neuter, and these are all changing as per the rules which we have learned in our previous lessons. In this lesson, as we have promised that we will be discussing more about the usage of such nouns which the qualifying adjective, and here we will see that how they are changing. For example, in the beginning of the previous lessons, we have talked about the usage of the endings of adjective with the verb do much. We have taken an adjective novi, for example, novi dom, it has an adjective as well as a noun. Я думаю о новом доме. Я думаю о государственной школе. So, accordingly, you can also use such other adjectives and nouns with achom and akom, but you have to be very precise and clear when you use achom for inanimate and akom for animate. For brat, sistra, mama, papa, babushka, dedushka, etc., you can use akom, whereas for fabrika, for dom, for komnata, etc., you use achom irrespective of their gender. So, let us go to the next slide and understand how to use the adjective endings in achom and akom. Please pay attention. Adjective endings in ui, e kratki or o, e kratki are replaced by om while answering the question akom and achom, such as novi drug a novom druge, большой завод о большом заводе, современный город о современном городе, известный писатель об известном писателе. In this case, if you remember that we have talked about the usage of akom and achom according to the animate and inanimate. As we know that drug falls into a category of akom, pisachel falls into a category of akom, but we have seen that zavod, which means a plant, belongs to the inanimate. So, accordingly we will place the question о чем вы думаете? Я думаю о своем друге, о своем хорошем друге. Я думаю о большом заводе. Accordingly, you can also use these expressions in your own day-to-day communication in Russian. Now, let us go to the next slide and understand how to use these adjectives in the context of achom and akom, and pay attention to the changes in their endings. Here, such adjectives which ends with ee kratki, they will be changed into yem whenever they are used with akom. Хороший брат, соседний дом, последний концерт. Хороший брат will be used with akom. It will be changing into о хорошем брате. Соседний дом will be used with achom. It will be changing into о соседнем доме. Последний концерт will again be used with achom and it will be changed into о последнем концерте. Here again, as a rule, now we know that all such adjectives which ends with ee kratki will be changed into yem. That is why we have used последний like in the question achom, because concert belongs to the inanimate. Likewise, dom also belongs to the inanimate, and accordingly it has been used with appropriate adjective. But rules of changing the endings remains same, like we have learned about them while using question где. Let us now go to the next section and talk about more about such endings of adjectives and nouns when they are used with feminine and neuter gender nouns. Please pay attention to the next slide. Let us discuss about certain examples of achom and akom. Novaya podruga will change into a novai podruge and will be asked with akom. Achom on говорит? Он говорит о новой подруге. Молодая сестра will change into о молодой сестре. О чем он думает? Or in this case, since we have used the noun сестра, it belongs to о ком. О ком он думает? Он думает о молодой сестре. Then we have certain examples of inanimate. These nouns are like fabrika, strana, and we have used adjectives большая fabrika, it will change into a большой фабрике. Любимая страна changes into a любимой стране. But if we pay attention to the last example, известная артистка, we have used об известной артистке. So accordingly, now since we know that when to use achom and akom, but as we know that whenever a noun is ending with a vowel like ab Antone, ab inne, ab inji, ab America, etc., if we have an adjective starting with a vowel, ob will be placed, such as in the case of ab известной артистке. Please pay attention to this example once again. Известная артистка has been changed into об известной артистке. Accordingly, you need to remember the rules applied when these adjective endings are changing with the noun endings. But you only need to remember when to use akom and when to use achom depending upon the category these nouns belong to, such as Padruga belongs to akom, Sistra belongs to akom, but Fabrika, Strana belongs to achom. Now, as we know that in feminine gender itself, we have certain nouns which ends with yaya. These adjectives of such nouns like соседняя девушка, сегодняшняя газета and последняя выставка are being placed. They will be changing accordingly. Let us see how. Соседняя девушка will be changing into a соседной девушке. Сегодняшняя газета will be changing into a сегодняшней газете, as well as последняя выставка will change into a последней выставке, because such endings of adjectives which ends with ya, it will be replaced by ye и кратки while answering the question о ком and о чем. Now, since we have just discussed about the usage of such nouns and adjective endings of masculine gender, about feminine gender endings of nouns and adjectives, we will be discussing now about the usage of adjectives of neuter gender. As we already know that there are nouns which ends with o, ye and ea, they belongs to the neuter gender. Accordingly, they have their adjective endings, and as we know that more or less the rule applies same for the masculine gender and neuter gender nouns and adjectives. Let us see how. Please pay attention to this slide. Here we have given examples that the neuter singular ending oa of an adjective is replaced by om while answering the question о чем. We have given examples like большое общежитие, о большом общежитии. О чем он говорит? Он говорит о большом общежитии. О чем он рассказывает? Он рассказывает о молодом государстве. So, these two examples, большое общежитие and молодое государство, has been used. They have been changed into о большом общежитии and a молодом государстве. Again, we have certain such adjectives in neuter gender itself which ends with ye. They will change into ем, like in the case of сегодняшнее собрание. It changes into a сегодняшнем собрании. Accordingly, соседнее здание changes into a соседнем здании. Now, we have just discussed that how these endings of adjectives of masculine gender, feminine gender and neuter gender are being used, especially when they are used in prepositional case, when they are asked by questions like о чем and о ком. We have also learned about certain exceptions in Russian, especially in the case of adjectives which we have used in masculine, feminine and neuter. We have also seen interesting things like when to use the word or nouns mach and doch. They have been changing into a macheri and a docheri. So, accordingly, you can also remember all these important facts as well as the basic rules and fundamentals when to use these endings as per the prepositional case, when they are used with questions like о чем and о ком. It is another interesting thing to be remembered that what are the nouns which are animate and which are the nouns which are inanimate. Accordingly, dear learners, as we have discussed in our previous sessions about the usage of personal pronoun in Russian. As you already know that in Russian we have personal pronouns like я, ты, он, она, оно, мы, вы and они. Accordingly, in this case too we have, please pay attention to the next slide so that we can understand these personal pronouns when they are asked with question о ком and о чем. Я changes into обо мне, о чем or о ком. These are the two questions asked, but these will be used with о ком. О ком он рассказывает? Он рассказывает обо мне. О ком он думает? Он думает о тебе. О ком он говорит? Он говорит о нем. О ком они воспоминают? Ani воспоминают о ней. О ком они говорят? Они говорят о нас. О ком они рассказывают? Они рассказывают о вас. And again you can use о ком они думают. Они думают о них. So here we have just seen that how to use these personal pronouns answering the question о ком. Я changes into обо мне. Ты changes into о тебе. Он changes into о нем. Она changes into о ней. Мы changes into о нас. We changes into о вас. And они is changing into о них. About me, about you singular, about he or about him, about her, about us, about you plural, and about us. So, accordingly, here you have seen the usage of these personal nouns when they are asked with the question a kом. Dear learners, in this lesson we have discussed about the usage of adjectives, especially when they are asked with certain nouns of masculine gender, feminine gender, and neuter gender. We have also seen that how the ending of these adjectives are changing. We will be discussing more about the usage of these adjectives and noun endings with examples in the form of dialogues and text. In the next lesson, as we have discussed, that we will be discussing more about such interesting things. With this, I conclude this session. Thank you.